sinking. I mean, who saw this coming for the second straight year? The Phoenix Suns getting bounced at home in blowout style last night, 125-100 to the Denver Nuggets. Let's bring in John Gambadoro of Arizona Sports, 98.7 FM. Gambo, thanks for jumping on with us. It's the day after. What's the mood out there in Phoenix?
The mood is everybody's thinking about, do you got to fire Monty Williams after this debacle? Do you trade DA? What do you do with Chris Paul? And has the window closed? Did they go all in for Kevin Durant? And now possibly you got a 35-year-old Kevin Durant not capable of carrying a team that you thought he could. So a lot of debating going on right now with the future of the Phoenix Suns.
Do you think this series would have gone different had they not had Kevin Durant and they had Cam Johnson and they had Mikal Bridges in the mix?
Look, I was one of the few people. I did not like the trade. I was not in favor of it. I thought there were two windows. There's a window to win right now, and there's a window to win over 5 years. Look, if they would have beat Milwaukee 2 years ago when they were up 2-0, they would have never made the Durant trade. I understand why they made it. The franchise is starved. They've never won a championship. They've been around since the 60s. They don't have one. I get why they did it. But 4 first-round draft picks, a pick swap, really good players in Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and then throw in Jay Crowder. I thought it was too much. I wouldn't have made the trade. I'm in the minority. I wouldn't have made the trade. I would have held on for window 2 because I think they would have had about a 5-year window to win a championship with those guys.
Gambo, who's the fall guy then? Who's to blame? Is it James Jones up there?
The roster's to blame.
And that's the GM's fault, right? It's not Monty Williams. That's the GM's fault, right?
Listen. When you've got 4 guys making max money, Kevin Durant supermax, Book supermax, DeAndre Ayton max, Chris Paul close to max. You don't have any money. You can't do anything. You got to sign a bunch of veteran minimum guys. Their roster is garbage. 4 through 10, it's no good. If you want to blame somebody, you blame the roster. The roster's not good enough to win. Is it the GM's fault? Yeah, but I think the new owner pushed him to make this Durant trade. They didn't make this Durant trade in July. They weren't willing to give up everything they gave up. New owner comes in. Let's make a big splash. They get Kevin Durant. It backfires. They're out in the second round just like they were last year.
So what do they do this offseason? Are they just going to run it back and hope it works out better next year?
Well, what else can they do? Okay? You can get rid of Chris Paul, but who are you going to get? It's a terrible free agent market. You're already over the luxury tax with 7 guys. You got 7 players. You're very close to that apron on the second tax where you won't be able to use your mid-level or your biannual. Okay, everybody's going to say, get rid of Chris Paul. Okay, who replaces him? He's still good. He's not great, but he's still good. Right. All right, get rid of DeAndre Ayton. Did you guys watch that game last night when Jacques Landale was the center? Who are you going to get that's better than DeAndre Ayton? Right. That was a turnstile last night. You don't have much of a choice, in my opinion. You could trade DA. You could waive Chris Paul and pay him over 5 years, but then you free up a little bit of money, but then who's going to replace him? Who are you going to get to be your point guard? It's not campaign. So I think that they really put themselves in a corner where they don't have a lot of options outside of, trying to redo the roster with all the role players by bringing in different role players.
Gambo, this sort of reminds me of LeBron with the Heat, where it was so top heavy, but LeBron had veteran guys willing to come in, take less to try and go for a championship. Can the Phoenix Suns, does Kevin Durant have that kind of draw? CP3, Devin Booker, do they have that kind of draw around the league where guys would want to play with them in hopes of winning the ring?
We're going to find out. I mean, listen, nobody goes into free agency saying, "Oh, I want a minimum contract." They all think they want more. They all want the mid-level. And then when they don't get it, all right, now I'll go to Phoenix on a minor deal. But that's what this roster. They were playing. Outside of Durant, they were playing T.J. Warren and Terrence Ross. Those guys weren't on the team 3 months ago. They just don't. The roster is why they lost, guys. They lost because the roster's not good. Denver was so much better than the Phoenix Suns. Look, they barely got by the Clippers, and the Clippers didn't have Paul George or Kawhi Leonard played on only one game, and the Clippers took him to the brink in every single game. Can you redo the roster to be a championship roster with 4 or 5 veteran minimum guys? I don't know. My guess is no. I think they're stuck right now. You could trade Ayton and see what you get, but how many teams want to pay $30 million to a center who's not that good defensively and doesn't block shots, doesn't shoot the three, and doesn't get to the free throw line? Who's going to want that?
So why they pay him, Gambo? I'm looking at the numbers here. Ayton's scheduled to make $32 million next year. Goes up to 34 and then 35. Why'd they pay him that much money?
Don't want to lose him for nothing. They didn't want to pay him. They didn't want to pay him that. Remember, when he was a restricted free agent, the Suns didn't say, "Oh, here's a 5-year max deal." No way. Now, when Indiana made the offer, their choice was lose them for nothing or max them out. But when you max them out on a restricted deal, when somebody makes an offer, you save $35 million, and you don't have to pay him for 5 years. You only pay him for 4. So they thought it was worth it to keep him because he was really good in 2021 when they made it to the NBA Finals. He held his own against Jokic. He was a beast in the playoffs. But Monty soured on him. Monty Williams soured on him, and he hasn't been the same player ever since.
Man, that's brutal. Do you think Kevin Durant is still good enough to get this team where they want to go, or is this Devin Booker's team with Kevin Durant riding shotgun?
We just found out that Kevin Durant's not good enough to carry a team. That doesn't mean he's not a great player. He's still a great player, but he needs, he's a number 2 guy. Booker's your 1, Ayton's your 2. That's a great 1-2 punch. Monty wore those guys out, played them 42 minutes a game in the playoffs. But the problem is that, again, the roster, you need a good supporting cast. Denver's got Aaron Gordon. They got Michael Porter Jr. They got Bruce Brown. They got KCP. The Suns don't have any of that. So they have support from Murray and Jokic. The Suns roster doesn't have that type of support. So I don't blame Booker, and I don't blame Durant. They didn't have a whole lot of help. Did they play well? No. Booker has not played well in the last 3 eliminations game. KD had 29 turnovers in this series. He was not good. He was good, but he wasn't great. He wasn't special like they thought they were going to get. So, yeah, I think that those 2 guys are fine if they could get the right supporting cast. But now the question is, how do you build a supporting cast around them when you're in the financial situation you're in?
Gambo, I want to go back to Ayton because he didn't play, obviously, had the rib injury. What's his future in Phoenix? Does he even want to be there? And I know he's making all the money, getting all paid, $30+ million, but something seems to be off in that situation. What's his future in Phoenix?
Yeah. A change of scenery, in my opinion, would be great for him. I think he's a good player, but the value at center is gone. Unless you're Jokic or Embiid, there's no value at center in this league anymore. He can't shoot the 3, and he doesn't get to the free throw line, and he doesn't block shots. He's a scorer. Guys, he's a good scorer. He'll go get you, 14, 15. He can be a 20-point scorer, but they don't use him a whole lot. So he's underused here in Phoenix. If he went somewhere else, I think he'd be a better player. But the problem is, I don't know that anybody's going to want to pay $102 million over 3 years for a guy that doesn't do he doesn't do the things that a modern center does. You'd rather pay Kevon Looney $8 million and get the production out of him than pay DeAndre $102 million over 3 years for what he does. So I don't know. They might be stuck with him. They'll look to make a trade, but it's going to be hard to find somebody that wants to pay him that type of money and give something up for him.
So the roster's in a bad spot. Are the Suns going to make a change in the front office, on the coaching staff, or are they going to stick with this roster because they have to, and stick with the GM and the head coach as well?
I don't think they would get rid of the GM, James Jones. I wouldn't get rid of Monty. Again, look, Monty should have called a timeout during the 17-0 run last night. He didn't. He should have never changed the roster the way he did. They went 8 games with the same roster in the regular season with Kevin Durant. They won all 8 games. You get to game 1 of the playoffs, Monty makes a change. Why? Why? Monty can learn from those mistakes, but we're going to find out. See, it's a new owner, so we don't know. We got Matt Ishbia. He's a new owner, so we don't know what he's going to do. Old owner, we probably would have known by now whether it be changes made or not. Monty's got 1 year left on his original deal for $5 million. And then Robert Sarver gave him, it was either a 2 or 3 year extension that made him one of the top 5 or 6 highest paid coaches in the league. Salary somewhere between $8 and $10 million a year. So if you buy out Monty, what are you talking about? $30 million, and you got to pay at least 3 to 4 years of his contract at about $30 million total. So I don't know. I mean, I think Ishbia could pay that no problem. My gut feeling is that they keep Monty and they keep James Jones, and then next year is the year they would get rid of him. But we're just not sure because it's a new owner.
You know, Gambo, I'm listening to you. Everything you're saying is making sense. The roster construction has not been strong. But to lose the way they did last night, it's one thing to get beat, but not to even show up. To me, there's something larger at play than just talent on the floor. I'm talking about internal fortitude here. Where's the heart? Here's the fight. Is Devin Booker part of the problem? I don't know. But if something like that happens, I know how great Booker is. He's one of my favorite players. I love Devin Booker. But this is 2 straight years at home. And it's not just about the talent on the team. These guys laid down. This, to me, some heads got to roll, right? I mean, 2 years in a row.
Maybe. I mean, maybe Monty's head will roll. Maybe if they do, they're looking for a scapegoat. Again, I don't think it's Monty's fault, but I think it's the roster's fault. But I understand what you're saying. Look, they didn't have 2 of their starters playing in these last 2 games. So they go in with 5 starters, Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton, and they lose those. They couldn't afford to lose them. They don't have any depth. They don't have any roster. That was a masterpiece that Denver put on, a 24-minute clinic that put them up by 30. It was perfection. And the Suns never answered. They got down, they got defeated, and they got their spirit broken, man. They got their spirit broken, and they never got back into the game. I mean, it is. It's humiliating to lose at home like that. I get it. Does somebody's head need to roll? Maybe. But I think you just, look, Monty Williams, you want to fire him? He took him to the NBA Finals 2 years ago. I mean, he's been in the playoffs the last 3 years.
Mike Budenholzer won a championship. Mike Budenholzer won a championship, and you saw what happened to him.
Yeah. Right, I know.
And they say in the NBA, you can't change the players. You change the coach.
Change the coach. Yeah, no, I get it. And, look, I would not be surprised if they fire Monty and try to hire Budenholzer. I wouldn't be surprised. They tried to hire Budenholzer before they hired Monty. Sarver had an interview with him, but Budenholzer wanted to coach a star, and the Suns didn't have a star at that time. So he wanted to go to move. But the Suns interviewed Budenholzer. They met in a hotel, I think in Atlanta, and they interviewed him, but he didn't want the Suns job. Maybe now, maybe Nick Nurse, Mike Budenholzer. I understand if they make a change, I don't think you can say, oh, that's a terrible decision. There has been epic failures by the Suns the last 2 years. They should have never lost to the Dallas Mavericks last year. They should have never lost to them in Game 7 at home. And they should have put up more of they shouldn't have beat Denver. Denver's a better team, guys. Come on. Denver's better. I don't mind losing, right? But we don't mind losing, but it's, man, you got steamrolled. You got steamrolled at home. That's humiliating. And, now we all question, do you have to make a major change or not?
All right, Gambo, thanks for jumping on with us, man, and enjoy the offseason. Who knows? It could be a turbulent offseason down there in the Valley of the Sun. Appreciate you for jumping on with us today.
All right, you got it, boys. Take care.
All right,
thanks,
my man.
Gambo.
All right, John Gambo jumping on with us. Chris and Co. Drapes and Kyle Madson here with you after this brief timeout. Pull out your list, big fella, because we're going to continue to talk about the